Okay, there's a lot to talk about when we talk about Valorant. So let's talk about maps for now. Maps are the pillar of any tactical game. Let's look at CSGO. CSGO is maps. The map culture in CSGO is massive. There's mapping competitions. People just map in that game and learn how to map just because it's just a hobby to them and they really enjoy it. So right now, a big topic for Valorant are the maps. But at first glance, they feel claustrophobic. It feels like a collection of a bunch of small rooms. They feel really simple, and it feels like there's just a really limited number of angles. And even the peaks, they feel really predictable. I feel like if I was playing, I would know exactly where to put my crosshair at any given moment. It's actually very reminiscent of the choke points from Overwatch. When we first started to play Overwatch, we were all really confused at first because there were some crazy choke points in that game. Let's look at Anubis, for example, in Overwatch. That first choke point area that the attackers have, it's just a tiny, narrow hallway, and a lot of us were like, how is this good map design? But something that we learned is that this actually kind of works for Overwatch because it forced a lot of us to figure out how to use our skills and abilities and even team compositions to get past that choke point. And it also really forced a lot of creative play from a lot of different people. It forced us to do something that we weren't normally used to doing. And we know that Valorant does have some Overwatch vibes, but spiritually it's a lot closer to CSGO. We all know this. But let's ask ourselves, what's the goal of Valorant maps? Obviously, it's competitive balance, meaningful gameplay, but something else that they keep pushing is about creativity. It's about having these super creative moments and these crazy plays. The famous and legendary filmmaker Orson Welles once said, "The enemy of art is the absence of limitations." I know that's really big and super heady, but in gaming, when the sky is the limit, you often don't get to have these kind of crazy creative moments where it feels like you're clutching and it feels like you're making plays that not many people do or have never been done before. And so that leads me to ask the question, is that what Riot is trying to do in Valorant? Are they trying to create some sense of limitation so that we can use our gunplay and use the skills and abilities that we have with the different characters and even the compositions to overcome? But the maps in Valorant appear to be complex in other ways. When we look at this overview of one of the alpha maps, there's obviously a lot of rotations for both attackers and defenders. There's a lot of paths, and there's a lot of smaller rooms instead of these large areas that you see in games like CSGO. Something notable is that Riot Senior Games designer Sal Garozzo is the creator of CSGO's infamous DE cache. And so presumably he's having a lot of impact on these new maps that Valorant is making. So what I wanted to do is take a look at DE cache and Valorant's new map called Bind, I believe, and just compare them and see how they contrast against each other. In order to do this, I drew a simplified layout of each map in Photoshop based on the overview that we have of each map. And I just wanted to give a shout out to Reddit user Nader Eater. Anyways, shout out to him for making the overview map for Valorant's Bind. And so here's the simplified version of DE cache, and here's the simplified version of Bind. I think it's really interesting that obviously they're putting a lot of attention onto making these maps super playable and super competitive, and you can definitely tell that they're taking all, not some, all of their inspiration from CSGO. And it does put my mind to rest at least a little bit, knowing that they have someone like Sal Garozzo, the guy that made DE cache, making these maps for them. And when you really get into it here, it gets kind of exciting to look at this because you've got some really interesting dynamics at play in a map like this. So as most of you know, this map has 3 different sites instead of the traditional 2 in CSGO. You've got A, B, and C here. But something that really excites me about this map is the middle area. You've got this middle ramp that goes right into B, but then you also have this other kind of alt mid section that runs between B and C. And I can already tell that owning the middle section of this map is going to give whichever team a massive advantage. See, if you own this kind of alternative mid area, you can rotate right into B, or you can rotate right into C, or if you decide to lock down either of these sites, you can go over here and lock down the alley area. Now, if you lock down the alley area, you'll be able to cut off those CT rotates that the defenders will be making. So for example, if you cap and plant at C and you put some people here, you'll be able to cut off all those rotates, put some people here, you'll be able to cut off all the rotates coming in from A to B to C. So already I'm getting kind of excited when I just look at these overviews of the different maps that the Riot team is making. So it's obvious that the footage and the map design tell different stories. I mean, you have a relatively simple in-game design, like I said, with the predictable angles and the simplistic cover and the simplistic objects, but the map design itself looks really advanced and a little bit on the complicated side. It kind of feels like the salt and pepper gameplay. Obviously the salt being the simple stuff and the pepper being the complicated and unexpected moments. And I think that there's a chance that it could all come together and really work. I went into this video super skeptical because the footage and the gameplay it looked a little stale to me. But I'm not leaving as skeptical. I think I might be seeing Sal Garozzo's design philosophy in play here with Valorant, and I'm kind of excited to see what him and the rest of the Riot team are going to do next. But on a final note, I think it's important to say that there's obviously not going to be a modding scene with Valorant. You know, CSGO's mapping and skinning scenes are like legit communities with people that come together in the name of creativity, in the name of gameplay, to further the game and better the game. These mappers can change the course of the competitive scene. It's really interesting, but Valorant won't have that. All of that is going to be sitting on Riot's shoulders. Thanks so much everyone for watching. Please like and subscribe. It actually helps. I am new to this if you haven't noticed already. So your feedback actually means something to me. So go ahead and leave it. Peace and love, everybody.